So how many times have words come out of your children's mouth that is so funny that you laugh so hard, tears stream down your face, and you're lucky if you don't pee in your pants? This is what I think at least twice daily when my daughters say something that is so hilarious that you couldn't make it up even if you tried, even after a few glasses of wine. So with the utmost respect of your time, I'll just give you my top 3 favorites in chronological order. Story number 1. After a hideous divorce, being in hiding for a short while, and being totally broke in both spirit and in bank account, I decided to do something really stupid and asked my 2 little girls what I could do to be a better mommy. My 4-year-old looked at me and said, "Mommy, just don't ever leave me anymore when I'm sick." I knew exactly the incident she was talking about, and I reassured her that that would never, ever happen again. And then I looked at my almost 3-year-old and asked her how I could be a better mommy for her, and without hesitation, she looked at me in her high bun and Winnie the Pooh pajamas and said, "More beef." Startled by her odd response, I said, "Well, what kind of beef, honey?" And she said matter-of-factly, "Oh, I don't know, roast beef, corned beef, any kind of beef." She then later renamed herself, thanks to her favorite movie and her newfound love of red meat, Princess Fiona Beefy. Doozy story number 2. Once when I took my daughters and one of their girlfriends out to lunch, Madison, our oldest, decided to brag on her BFF, telling me that Alexandra was the most brilliant 4th grader of all time, that she had never gotten less than 100% on any test or school assignment. I actually gave birth to little worker bees, where we all break into a big happy dance when we get B's and C's. I actually wanted to stick my finger down my throat to puke, but instead, I did the very mother-mature thing and said, "Wow, Alexandra, that's fantastic. Your parents must be so proud of you." As God is my witness, she looked at me and said, "Well, Mrs. Ray, it's really no surprise. You do know that my mother is a piano virtuoso and my father is a brain surgeon. And in fact, did you know that my grandfather's second cousin was Albert Einstein?" With that, my 6-year-old looked at her and said, "Wow, Alexander, that's so cool. Einstein? Does that mean you get all the bagels you want for free?" Number 3. When one of our daughters was 10 or 11, after dinner had been eaten, dishes had been washed, homework was finished, and everything was quite calm in the Ray household, my husband and I were actually cozily laying in bed, eating our skinny cows, watching television. When she came in, stood by the end of the bed, and very forthrightly said, "Mother, Father, I decided to tell you something very, very important." My husband looked at me and whispered, "What do you think, honey? Is she joining the circus or the USO?" And she said, "Daddy, you're not funny. I just finished watching Teen Mom." Huge mistake not putting a parental lock on that show. "And I've decided it's time that I start shaving my pubic hairs." A millisecond didn't even pass when my sweet yet totally shell-shocked husband slid all the way to the bottom of the bed, under the covers, and started faintly saying, "Help me! Help me!" Just like Vincent Price and Jeff Goldblum did in The Fly. So, if you're wondering where I'm going with my story that began so innocently with "apples don't fall far from the tree," let me try to explain. Last May, I went to the high school parent-teacher conference. They had it set up very organized where all the teachers sat in the gym in alphabetical order. Parents were all allowed to talk to each teacher for up to 5 minutes. The lines were much longer than they should have been, primarily because some parents kind of go crazy, talking about why their son is only getting a B- in ceramics because his bowls just aren't as symmetrically round as they should be. It had been a long day, I was tired, I was hungry, but I actually had my post-parent teacher conference glow on. I had found out that my kid was getting all A's and B's, and all the teachers were telling me that she was an absolute pleasure to have in class. I actually stopped a teacher as he was spouting wonderful things and said, "Now you're talking about my kid, right? The one with the cute strawberry blonde bob?" I was in the home stretch, only had 2 more teachers to meet, and finally sat down to this sweet, not ready for what was about to hit him teacher. And he said, "Hello, Mrs. Ray. I'm pleased to tell you that Madison has an 89.935 in my class. But with a little extra credit, I'm sure that she'll be able to raise it to an A-." I looked at him, and tears were actually streaming down my giddy face. He said, "Is anything wrong?" And I said, "Oh, no, I'm just so happy." He said, "That's great. Is there anything she's having problems in class with?" I looked at him and said, "Well, since you asked, the only problem she had was on last night's assignment." I then continued to babble. While she was doing her homework, she was just very confused to where to put the woman's hymen on the anatomically correct diagram. He looked at me like I had four heads, and as his semi-bald head turned beet red and started sweating profusely, he said, "You mean hyphen, don't you, lady? Where to put the hyphen?" I just looked at him squeamishly and said, "No, I said the hymen." And then I said, "Well, you are the anatomy teacher, aren't you?" And he looked at me and said, "No, lady, I'm your daughter's English teacher." In the corner of my eye, I could see all the parents pointing at me and laughing hysterically. And as I literally crawled out of the gym, I couldn't help but think about what I just did and how Maddie, with no fault of her own, was going to have to switch schools on Monday. All because I was just trying to make a little bit of small talk. And then, that is when it hit me. These goofy kids who say the stupidest things at the most inopportune times really are my daughters. And yes, apples don't fall far from the tree, do they?